Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello learners. Today we will continue with our module on evidences of evolution from the paper Evolutionary Biology. Under this module, in the previous lectures, we have discussed various evidences of evolution, and then we particularly focused on paleontological evidences of evolution. Now this is the third lecture under this module where we will focus upon geological timescale. I am Dr. Sudhir Verma, working as Assistant Professor in Department of Zoology, Deen Dayal Upadhyay College, University of Delhi. In this lecture, we will focus upon geological timescale, and we will discuss the geological timescale under various subheads, like we will discuss what geological timescale is, how it is being prepared, and who's the organization responsible for making this geological timescale and updating it. We will also discuss the various terms that are being used in the geological timescale, what are the components or divisions of this timescales are, and then side by side we will discuss about the significance of having such a geological timescale. So starting with geological timescale, about what it is. A geological timescale is a chronological dating system that relates geological strata, which in other words we call as stratigraphy, with time. So a combination of stratigraphy with time is something we call as geological timescale. It is being used by the geologist as well as the paleontologist to describe the timing and relationships of various events that have taken place on Earth. It is based on the principle of uniformitarianism, according to which the natural geological processes were uniform in frequency and magnitude throughout time. You must remember we discussed the theory of uniformitarianism when we discussed about general theories of evolution. The earliest geological time scales simply use the order of rocks laid down in the sedimentary rock sequence, which we call as stratum, with the oldest at the bottom. Now this principle or law is called as law of superposition, according to which the oldest strata are the ones which are present at the base or the bottom, whereas the ones which are present above them or present at the top are comparatively newer. The fossils provided the opportunity for workers to correlate between geographically distinct areas. So how fossils are actually proving helpful to us in deciding the geological time, that we'll discuss under the geological time scale. Geologists and paleontologists constructed the geological table based on the relative position of different strata and the fossils which are present under these strata. So, in geological time scale, basically a combination of stratigraphy or the study of strata is being combined with the study of fossils or the paleontology. William Smith gave first geological map of most of the Britain. So whenever we discuss about the geological time scale, we remember William Smith for his contribution of mapping Britain in geological senses. But with the advancements in the science, with the discovery of radioactivity and the radiometric dating methods, absolute dating study started. And the first geological time scale, which was published in 1913, was given by British geologist Arthur Holmes. Later on, in 1974, the Global Commission on Stratigraphy, which is now called as the the International Commission on Stratigraphy started to establish global geological timescale. This is the organization who has the responsibility of preparing the geological timescale and updating the same time to time. So let us quickly discuss about this organization. This is the largest and oldest constituent scientific body in the International Union of Geological Sciences, that is IUGS. And the prime objective of this organization is to precisely define the global units, just like systems, series and stages of the International Chronostratigraphic Chart, that in turn are the basis for the units of geological time, that is periods, epochs and ages. These terms are just like any other time which we represent in the form of hours, minutes and seconds. So in geological time or the international scale of geological time, we use the terms periods, epochs, ages, etc. We'll discuss this in a bit from here. This organization sets the global standards for the fundamental scale for expressing the history of Earth. So this is the prime organization that put forward various standards which are globally acknowledged for expressing the time on Earth's history. Now if you see this scale, on this side you can see various kind of fossils which are present in different strata of the rocks. Consider this as one rock which is presented in different sedimentary strata, and each strata is being occupied by a particular type of fossils. And on the right side you see the different zones of time which have been named on the geological time scale. Now this correlation of time with the fossils in the strata is something the biostratigraphy is called. Whereas on the extreme right you can see some figures. These figures are basically the numbers or the years presented in million years kind of thing, where these numbers come from actual radiometric dating. So in this figure you actually see two things. This is the fossils which provide relative dating of rocks and the relative time scale, whereas these numbers are coming from radioactivity based studies or radiometric dating based studies which provide the absolute dating. The different kinds of fossils characterize different intervals of time, and this principle is called as principle of faunal succession. Now moving ahead with our discussion with relative and absolute timing, the geological time scale is discussed in these two forms. The one which is based on relative time, we call it as chronostatic one, which is mainly by the biostratigraphic studies. So just we discussed the fossil based dating kind of studies are termed under biostratigraphy. On the right side which you saw the numbers which are based on the radiometry based, that particular study is called as chronometric. The absolute time measurements can be used to calibrate the relative time scale, producing an integrated geologic or geochronologic time scale. So most of the times the radioactivity based or radiometry based scale is combined with the relative time scale to give the actual geological time scale, which we are going to discuss in this lecture. Let us quickly go through with the various terminologies that are being used to express the geological time scales. And as mentioned here on this extreme left column, they are the segments of rock in chronostratigraphy. So the part of the rock which has been named, it has been correlated with the time spans in geochronology. So this column represents the segment of rock. This column represents the corresponding time span in geochronology. So Eonathum is the segment of rock and the time scale corresponding to that is named as eon. Erathum to era, system to period, series to epochs, stages to ages, and chronozone to chron. Now in the geological time scale, of International Commission of Stratigraphy, which we are going to discuss, we won't discuss this chrome because that is not being considered by the Geological Timescale Commission. We will discuss about eon, era, period, epoch, and the further division, which is ages. Now, this is one of the representative image of the geological timescale. This is not the complete geological timescale, but enough to understand the structure of geological timescale. As you can see, there are four basic divisions: eons. Eons are divided into eras. Eras are divided into periods, and periods further divide into epochs. Now, if you talk about the first division, that is eons, from older, that is at the base, towards younger, there have been so far 4 eons which have been characterized throughout the history of Earth. The first starting with Hadean, then Archean, Proterozoic, and the Phanerozoic. Phanerozoic is the eon which is currently going on, so the recent eon where we are living now. Whereas these are the 3 Precambrian eons. Let us start our discussion about geological timescale with the understanding of eons, and then we'll keep on moving to all these parts, and I will focus about the part which we are discussing using this red colored box. So this figure you will repeatedly see throughout the lecture, where this red box will focus upon the part of the geological timescale which we will refer to. So let's start with the discussion of eons. So the first division, which is called as eons, there are 4 eons so far in the history of Earth. The first one was the Hadean, followed by Archean, followed by Proterozoic, and lastly the recent one, which is called as Phanerozoic. The first 3, that means Hadean, Archean, and Proterozoic, are combinedly called as superaeon Precambrian. Now, why we call as Precambrian as a superaeon, you can understand, because it is comprising of 3 eons before the Phanerozoic. If you see this pie chart, this is the Phanerozoic which we are living in right now, the eon currently going on. Almost 88% of the time so far that has elapsed on Earth has been covered by these Precambrian super eons. Here you can see the time points. So 4.54 billion years ago, this is the time when Earth started till the point where we are living right now. So the whole time has been divided into these 4 eons. Let us start with our discussion on Precambrian eon. This is another representation, and you can appreciate that most of the time point so far has been taken up by these Precambrian eons, the 3 eons which we talked about, and this comprises of the recent Phanerozoic eon which we are talking about. The Precambrian super eon is also called as Cryptozoic, and that is the only super eon which we have in our geological time scale. This Precambrian super eon, as we just mentioned, comprises of Hadean, Archean, and Proterozoic eons. This is named so because it preceded the Cambrian period. Now, Cambrian is the first period of our current Phanerozoic eon. So, since this represents the time before the Cambrian period, we call it as Precambrian period, and it is divided into these 3 eons. As I just mentioned, it accounts for almost 88% of Earth's total geological time. It spans from the formation of Earth, which was around 4600 million years ago, to the beginning of the Cambrian period, which started at around 451 million years ago. So you can appreciate the time, the long time which was coming under the Precambrian period. So, as I just mentioned, I'll focus on these boxes throughout the geological time scale. So, we talked about different eons, a general overview of 4 eons. Now, we are going to focus upon these Precambrian eons, that is Hadean, Archean and Proterozoic. Now, you can see here, this is the Precambrian supereon, which is divided into Hadean first, and this is the time point, that is around 4600 million years ago, and it went till 4000 million years ago, after which the Archean eon came into play, which went till 2500 million years ago, and then the Proterozoic eon came, which went till 541 million years ago, and then the further division. So we'll go to each of these eons one by one, starting with our first eon, that is called as Hadean eon. It started from the formation of Earth. So that was around 4.6 billion years ago, or 4600 million years ago, until first appearance of the sedimentary rock. Now this is an imaginary image to show that could have been the possible condition of Earth at these particular eon's time. So it started from 4.6 billion years ago to 4 billion years ago, and hence approximate 600 million years was the duration of this eon. There was no observable fossil found in this particular time point. The term Hadean eon was coined by geologist Preston Cloud in the year 1972. W. Brian Harland later coined an almost synonymous term, which is called as Priscon period. This comes from the Latin word priscus, which means the ancient. Other older texts refer to it as pre-Archean periods. As we just saw, the eon Archean follows the Hadean eon. So, the Hadean eon is also called as pre-Archean eon. Hadean word comes from the Hades, and this Hades is a Greek word for the god of underworld, which means it is hinting towards hell-like conditions which were prevailing on the earth at these years of its beginning. So it was just like hell-like of condition. We do not have any fossils from that particular time. So there was no life form as such. Moving on to the next eon, which is Archean eon. The earth cooled down to form continents, and thus the life began in this particular eon. It lived for around 1500 million years, starting from at 4 billion years to 2.5 billion years ago. The appearance of sedimentary rocks, stromatolites and benthic prokaryotes were seen. The Archean word comes from the ancient Greek word, which means the beginning or the origin. And you can have an idea from this imaginary image that what could have been the possibility of Earth at this particular time. Moving ahead, the next eon is called as Proterozoic eon. The time from the appearance of oxygen in Earth's atmosphere to just before the proliferation of complex life on the Earth. So this around 1959 million years long period, starting from 2500 million years ago to 541 million years ago, is something that comes under this Proterozoic eon. The word Proterozoic comes from the Greek words protero, which means the former or earlier, and the zoic, that means the life. So the earlier forms of life come from this particular eon. This eon has been divided into Paleoproterozoic, Mesoproterozoic and Neoproterozoic, which correspond to the appearance of planktonic prokaryotes, eukaryotes and the multicellular organisms respectively. So these are the three Precambrian eons that we just discussed. Let us quickly move to the eon where we are living right now. That is the current or the recent eon named as Phanerozoic. This is the current eon on geological time scale, and it started around 541 million years ago and it's going till present time. This is the eon during which most abundance is seen in terms of plant and animal life. The term was coined in 1930 by an American geologist, George Halkett Shelvick, and the word originates from the Greek words phaneros and zoe, which mean the visible life, because this is the time when we actually have seen the existence of life. It is divided into three eras, which is called Paleozoic, Mesozoic and Cenozoic. So that means we are moving ahead from the eons to the era now. We are not talking about the era of Precambrian periods. We are now focusing upon the recent eon, which is called as Phanerozoic eon, and we are going to discuss the era which come under this Phanerozoic eon. And there are three eras, that is Paleozoic, Mesozoic and Cenozoic. Paleozoic means the old life, Mesozoic means the middle life, and Cenozoic means the new life. And as we just mentioned, it started at around 541 million years ago and it's going till now. So these are the era which we are going to discuss now. We have discussed this Precambrian eons, we have discussed the Phanerozoic eons, and now moving ahead to the next division of the geological time scale in terms of era, where we are going to discuss the era of Phanerozoic eon. The first era is called as Paleozoic era. The word Paleozoic comes from the Greek words Paleos, which means the old, and the zoic means the life. So it represents the ancient life. This era is the earliest and longest era of Phanerozoic eon. It started at around 541 million years ago and it went till around 251.9 million years ago. So it's the longest era of this eon. This is the time where the dramatic geological, climatic and evolutionary changes were observed in the history of Earth. The Paleozoic comes after the Neoproterozoic era of the Proterozoic eon and is followed by the Mesozoic era. As you can see here, the Paleozoic is divided into different periods like Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous and Permian, starting from 541 million years ago to 252 million years ago. And on this chart, you can see the corresponding position. Remember, we are talking about Phanerozoic eon, under which we are currently discussing the Paleozoic era, which is divided into Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian and Carboniferous-Permian periods. Here we are talking about these periods. So starting with the first period, which is called as Cambrian periods. Now in the coming slides, we will discuss all these periods under the similar formats. We will focus upon the word which has been used as a name of that particular period, who has derived that word, what is the duration of that particular period, and it's starting from where, ending at where, and the major organic event that took place on this particular period's time. So regarding the Cambrian period, it came from the word Cambria, which is the Latin name for the city of Wales. The name was given by Adam Sedgwick in 1835, and this period started at around 541 million years ago and it went till 485.4 million years ago. So a total duration of around 55.6 million years. There was a sharp increase in the fossil of invertebrates. So this era, basically this period, represents the large fossil record of invertebrates. Next period is Ordovician period. The word Ordovician comes from the Welsh tribe of Ordovices, and it was named by Charles Lepworth in 1879. Starting at around 484.4 million years ago, it went till 443.8 million years ago. So a total duration was 41.6 million years. It has been observed that there was a dominance of invertebrates here. The first vertebrate came into existence in this particular period, and there is a major mass extinction event that took place in this particular period is called as Ordovician Silurian mass extinction event. We are calling it as Ordovician Silurian because it was at the end of Ordovician and just at the starting of the next period, which is called Silurian. And what are these mass extinction events? These are the events where the species, almost 60 to 70% species on Earth, get lost because of these extinction events. We will discuss the mass extinction events in the later lectures. The next period is called as Silurian period, which comes from the word Silure of Celtic tribe of Wales, and it was named Silurian by Roderick Murchison in 1835. This 24.6 million year long period started at around 443.8 million years and it went till 419.2 billion years ago. This is the period where the first land plants and land invertebrates originated. This period also observed the Ordovician Silurian mass extinction event, which we just discussed. The next period is Devonian period. The word Devonian is derived from the Devon, that is the place in England where rocks from this period were first studied, and this name was given by Sedgwick and Murchison in 1839. This period lasted for around 60 million years, starting at 419.2 and went till 358.9 million years ago. This period is also named as Age of Fishes because most of the fishes flourished in that particular period. The first land vertebrates originated here. There was another extinction event which took place in this period. It's called as Devonian period mass extinction event. The next period, which is called as Carboniferous period, it is divided into two. That is Lower Carboniferous period, which is also called as Mississippian period, and there is Upper Carboniferous period also, which we'll discuss in the next slide, which is called as Pennsylvanian period. This Mississippian period was named so because of the Mississippi basin where rock formation of this period were discovered, and it was named by Alexander Winchell in 1869. This period started at around 358.9 million years ago and went till 323.2 million years ago. So a duration of around 35.7 million years comes under this period. And this is the time where the development of amphibians and insects took place. So the next period within the Carboniferous is called as Upper Carboniferous or Pennsylvanian period. Pennsylvania state is the reason why this is called as Pennsylvanian period. This is the state where coal productive beds of this age were widespread. This is named by H.S. Williams in 1819, and the duration of this period is around 24.3 million years, starting from 323.2 million years ago till 298.9 million years ago. The appearance of early reptiles took place in this particular period, and all the modern classes of fungi originated in this particular period only. The last period under the Paleozoic era is named as Permian period, and the word Permian comes from Perm region in Russia. This was named by Roderick Murchison in 1841. This period lasted for around 47 million years, starting from 298.9 million years ago to 251.902 million years ago. And the major event that took place, one of the mass extinction event, which is called as Permian Triassic extinction event, took place in this particular period. Proliferation of reptiles and extinction of many early forms of invertebrates took place in this particular period. So we talked about Paleozoic era and we discussed the various periods which come under this Paleozoic era.